Welcome to Job Tales, the show where we find out about various professions from around the world. Each week I speak to a new guest with a very interesting job. Do you know that what you do today is not necessarily what you will be doing later down the road? Today's guest is Paul Cockerill. He has been a TV producer for about 40 years and became a flight attendant at the age of 59. Paul, welcome to Job Tales. Yours is a truly inspiring job tale, and I would like you to start from the beginning. Can you tell me how you started your career?
For most of my life, I would describe it as I lived my dreams, and those were to get to Hollywood and to have a career in television production. I started by pursuing ground level, entry level jobs in Seattle, where I was born, raised, went to school. And then when I was 20, I made my way down to Los Angeles through one connection and one connection only that I had made. And I became what they call a page at the ABC television network in Hollywood and worked on many different television productions and also in local television talk shows in the early 80s.
What's Paige?
Yeah, Page basically is an usher for studio audience television shows. So I did things like Family Feud and other game shows and sitcoms like Mork and Mindy with Robin Williams, and it was a wonderful time to be in Los Angeles in the early 80s.
Yeah, fantastic. So you had this passion and this wish to work in television, right? As a producer, mainly.
I think so. I think it was always about making dreams a reality of creation and putting that together in script, if you will, audio and video and editing.
And so you, of course, you have to go up the ladder. And how was your first approach to the television industry?
Well, I didn't have any family members or any relatives in the business. I was completely, what they say, a fish out of water. So the connections I was making were solely my own. Literally began with one, of course, and through this job at the ABC television network in Los Angeles, I was able to mature that into my work lifestyle, which I would always say, if I could describe it, I've been passionate about work. I've worked for now 51 years of my life, started at 13.
Wow.
And here in Los Angeles, I was at the ripe old age of 20, but I was dedicated and I was given opportunities. And, I worked on the Academy Awards. I worked on, things like the Super Bowl. I worked on different shows of, just world, back then in the early 80s, Hollywood was the place you went to have things made, and to have things created.
And so you're mentioning various shows. So what was your role in these shows, like from the beginning?
From the beginning, I really was what they called a production assistant. I could assist the producers in any way, whether it was making copies of scripts or copies of research or sending research out, for hosts to study overnight before they went to interviews, going out on interviews with crews and, logging tapes because it was all videotape back then. And I moved on up to, by the time very fast, by the time I was 24 years old, it was only 3, 4 years in Los Angeles, they gave me my own daily talk show to produce, a live 1 hour show in Los
Oh,
Angeles.
fantastic.
And I was like a kid in a candy store. It was
No
live.
kidding.
It had remote trucks from around not only the Los Angeles area, but around the country. I remember at one time, oddly enough, I don't even know how I found him, but I've always remembered this story. I found a gentleman named Dan Fujita who owned all the McDonald's in Japan.
Oh yeah.
And I interviewed him, on the show. And it was like, it was just like a silly interview at the time. But I literally realized, again, my dreams. I would think about it and overnight and what I was going to do next week. And I could make those dreams like literally come true and produce them for a television show.
Fantastic. Yeah. And what did you find was most difficult in starting up as a producer?
I think the thing that makes it not something for everyone is it has its inconsistencies when it comes to employment. I would describe being a producer as a job that any producer will tell you they probably have gone to more job interviews than anyone else because other people tend to end up in careers that might be 10, 20, 30 years of their life, and maybe they've been to you know one, two, or three interviews. I can tell you that, just thinking out loud here, that I have probably in my lifetime been to 50 interviews or more. I've interviewed for 50 jobs because television shows don't last forever. Some shows last 6 weeks, some shows last six
Right.
months, some shows last
Mm.
6 years. I was always in that. I mean, the longest I was ever employed on a single television show was 3 years.
Okay, so that's already like the most the ultimate goal that one could have, to stay that long in a show or longer.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you look at shows that are, or people who work in broadcast news and journalism, they
Yeah.
tend to have much longer, longevity. I mean, your chances of getting on something, as I jokingly say, but it's pretty much known around the world, of a game show of the nature of like Family Feud or The Price is Right, you might be there for a good long time.
Right. Yeah. So, what kind of skills did you acquire to become a producer?
Well, academically, I was never a great student. I went to only less than a year of college, university, and I really got to thinking as I was in the early classes for broadcasting that, unless I'm going to be a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer, I really don't see this education helping me in a, television production career. So it was pretty much hands-on learning. I learned how to go and shoot a segment in the field with the cameraman and an audio engineer, and get the coverage of the shots you need, and how to go back and then go into an edit room and work with an editor. Back then in the day, you had the luxury of having an editor to work with, so
Mm.
it wasn't yourself having to put the hands on like we do today.
Yeah.
But it taught me, how to build a story, whether it was a 3-minute story or whether it was a 30-minute program. And I would have to say it was pretty much all self-taught.
So the writing was it a big part of your job?
It was, I would say there's a bit of a formula to it. I wrote briefly for an earlier years of America's Got Talent with the host wraparounds. At that time, Nick Cannon was the host. Once you realize who your host is and what their tone is and what their style is, you write these host raps, and the studio portion is what I'm calling host raps. And you can really, sort of get it down to a formula, should I say. It's not like writing a movie script. I've never written a movie script or written a scripted television show like a situation comedy or a drama or anything like that. I've always stayed in the career path of what I call reality television, competition show television,
Mm-hmm.
and
Okay.
live broadcast television.
Was it because it just happened to be that field that you stumbled upon when you first started on TV?
I do. I think it was working at the beginnings in a local television station. I had a knack for doing live television like nobody else. I could, an old movie I make reference to here called Broadcast News, and there's a scene where the gentleman is in the control room and he says, "I say it here and it comes out there," is really true. I spend a lot of time working for an American television icon, a gentleman named Dick Clark, and he really was my host. With it, he could go out there. We did the gold. I sort of created doing the Golden Globes arrival specials that were broadcast around the world. And
Mm-hmm.
he would always tell me, "Paul, just tell me who these people are, and we'll be fine." And we'd be writing a countdown to go to the whole life.
Did you have to pitch your show ideas to the TV?
Yeah. Besides getting a job in television, I also spent time creating television shows. The pitch is the sales job. I would not describe myself as a great salesman. I always say that I would have had more success in television if I had had more of a sales quality. But
Okay.
it requires going to agents. I mean, and I had many agents at many agencies, creative artists agencies, CAA. I had William Morris, and it's a lot of the time it's about who you are, not what you've created. Because I can tell you, over the decades, I've seen many television shows on the air where I'm going like, oh, that's so similar to the idea I pitched back when. Not to say that I'm trying to get something from somebody for those ideas, but I'm just saying it's one of those things where the idea process is really having to pitch it, get it pitched, get it sold, and get it made and get it on the air. I mean, and I've gone through many processes where getting it, I mean, I've got shows that actually were produced that never went on the air. I got 10 shows,
Oh,
10
really?
episodes of a show that was called Jingles for a very big American television producer named Mark Burnett. You know, got all paid out for it, but the show never went on the air. It never, it never made broadcast.
Wow. I see. Yeah. So there must be a lot of that too, and you need to deal with it. But you got paid for the job.
Oh
Or
yeah. No, I
yeah.
mean, the job in television, and television has changed, of course. I call it the splintering of entertainment now. Not
Hmm.
as a bad thing, but in 1980 there were four broadcast networks in the United States, and cable like HBO was just starting to come out and get nurturing that they were doing programming. But now, where you have everything available to everybody and you've got all this bandwidth and you can just do whatever you want to watch on demand. I call it the splintering of television because it's no longer appointment television. You don't have
No,
to be at home at 8 o'clock to
it's
watch
true.
something. You can catch it anytime you want and you can dictate the schedule.
So I'm thinking, when people today, the young listeners, or maybe in their late teens and early 20s, you think of the movie world and the world of TV as a really cool status to get, or it's a fantastic place to be because that's what we see a lot on video and on YouTube, on Instagram, and on TV or on Netflix. And is there any myth of the job that you wish to share and say, okay, guys, like an alert? It's not always as glamorous as it might sound.
I think the answer for me is that you got to keep on trying. There are many frustrating points, and there are also, I mean, when you make, when you make a television show or you sell a television show, you you have to you go out there generally with an idea. It starts with a simple sentence, right? A simple sentence becomes a paragraph, and then the paragraph sort of turns into something that was recorded on video. I mean, we now have access to all these sources where, like we are today, talking, that you can just record somebody, and especially if you're pitching something that's in a docudrama of a reality show, and you want to say, hey, this is the person I'm talking to, and I think she'd make an interesting show. Laura is this. Seeing is believing. People want to see the video, and now it's so accessible to do, and it's really about who you meet and who you contact, and it's who you know. I mean, if that person is really going to be, a global sensation, like let's say, the Kardashians didn't start out as the Kardashians, right? They were molded and shaped to,
Mhm.
be into this global pursuit.
Right. So then, do you have any regrets from looking at your past years?
I honestly have thought about this, many times, about, what would I have done differently? And I'm probably one of the few people that would tell you my lessons learned, and there were many negatives. I mean, I'm not perfect here. I've been, terminated from entertainment shows because I just wasn't the right fit, for writing or doing something, or they didn't need the person anymore. The show took a different direction. And you can
Hmm.
always sit there and go like, oh, well, that didn't work out and I didn't get that job. But there's always another show. I honestly think that my pursuit of doing production, and one big break I got when I was in the late 80s in 1989, I was approached by MTV to launch their Los Angeles bureau. And that was one of my biggest breakthroughs. Honestly, I mean, it's not the MTV of today, but back in the day, we used to go out and shoot things just literally on the spur of the moment and edit them and send them off to New York, and they were transmitted. And I don't think anyone ever looked at them before they went on the air, to be honest with you. Not like today where people, critique things, but they were all learning lessons. I honestly don't look at anything and say I have a big regret and oh, I
Right.
should have moved to New York, or and I was given opportunities to do things like that. Like, at one time MTV said, "Oh, move to New York." And I was like, "No, I'll just stay here in Los Angeles and something else will come along."
It's warmer and sunnier.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I mean, it's of course not easy to get in, for sure. And I remember from my days of just trying to work in productions, I had a resume that was really nice, but had nothing to do with filmmaking, and so nobody would look at me like that. Then I started to make videos and teasers about myself and my experience, and then after the 150th door that I knocked, someone opened, and then I started, at a very basic level, and then going up relatively fast, actually. So it's once you're in in this world and this community, then it becomes easier and easier, and then you get your opportunities there. So you've done that for over 40 years, if I understand correctly.
That's correct. Yeah.
Awesome. And then that's not how you ended your career, though. And this is the most, for me, exciting and interesting part of your job tale, because you have ended your career in the TV production and then started something completely else. And can you tell me about it?
Certainly. My transition was probably the hardest part of my adult career. I had reached a point when I was 56 that I was just, not getting the phone calls from the Hollywood community like I used to. It's obviously a younger person's business. The ideas were flowing, the connections were different, they weren't the same. And I was like, well, I got to find something to do. And one of the things I think, never being forewarned that you're not going to be doing what you're doing early on for the rest of your life, that there could be hiccups along the way. I was at a loss for where to turn to and what to do besides just applying for a job. So I had grown up as the son of a Boeing executive in Seattle and loved airplanes, but chose to go with the bright, shiny object in the corner called Hollywood and follow an entertainment career, which I loved.
Right.
But to my disappointment, because I always describe it, unfortunately, as though the entertainment career left me, not me leaving the entertainment career, I looked to the airlines and I thought, you know what? My father would jokingly say I was 40 years late to the airport, but I finally made it. I got into customer service. I honestly went for an interview and I told the gentleman, there used to be a show that was called Airline. And he said to me, and no lie, he said, if you saw that show and you still want to work here, fingerprinting's right over there, badging's right over there, you're hired. And my interview took only 2 minutes. And basically, I went to go work. I was working on the ground, customer service supervisor. I was very much a mentor to, the 20 and 30 somethings that I was then leading at like 56 years of age. And we were moving across the United States to Charleston, South Carolina. The job wasn't available. So, of all things, and I never wanted to be one in particular, was I became a flight attendant.
Awesome. Which is not an easy task. I mean, you have to go through quite some process, right?
Yes, there was. It's funny because I went through being a flight attendant at 59 years of age.
Amazing.
And I remember, even the interview was like, why do you want to be a flight attendant? And I said, honestly, I don't. Everyone else thinks I'm funny and I'm charming and I could be a good, I was a customer. I'd flown a lot, and I thought like the customer, to be honest with you. And so, here I am doing training in the pool at the life rafts, right? And everything. It's like, you're going through you're jumping down the slide up the back of a door, which, is not something you anticipate doing at 59, but I did it.
And here you are at
Yeah. And
59.
then here I am. So, oddly enough, I describe my career as I spent so much time working in the entertainment business where there was no connectivity with the audience. I used to describe it like going to the Department of Motor Vehicles and getting a driver's license, because I used to tell people in Los Angeles, if you want to see the real audience, go to the DMV and see who the real people are, because you just get market research back and, oh, these are the people watching your show and these are the people, but you never saw the people or shook hands with the people. And then here my career turns around. I'm 59 and I'm face to face with the traveling public, right? Traveling public, and then, an aluminum tube flying at, 35,000 feet and, having all sorts of things. I never thought in my lifetime, I've done CPR on 2 people now in my lifetime, which I never thought I'd do. And that
You
only
would do.
happened after I turned 59.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, no, it's absolutely great. And so, did you like the experience?
I loved it. Honestly, all my entertainment cohorts always looked at me and said, "Oh my gosh, I could never do that. I couldn't do that." But my mind was open to this opportunity, and I just thought about it as traveling. I hadn't really seen that much of the United States up until this point. And then all of a sudden you're traveling and you're doing overnights, and I've been to 100 different cities now all across the country with all the different sorts of people we've gone through during, you know, COVID times, elections, everything. And I've met so many people and experienced so many things in a good way. I have only got the best to say about my experience. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed, the customers, and because I was the customer. I treat people by the golden rule. Treat people the way you would want to be treated.
Yeah, which is the best, right? Yeah, and they feel it for sure. And so, with a vast experience in TV production and a few years of flight attendant, so what is next for you?
That's where we stand today. What is next for me? I'm now 64 years old. I think I have so many creative people that I have as resources. I have lived so many experiences. I'm looking, honestly, I think globally. I'd like to do something, I think, continuing in the travel line,
Mm-hmm.
and basically, I also have like a little bit of like, a sarcasm, to my delivery, and I have fun with people, and I'd like to sort of pursue something about a travel, like I say, I have the people, who can, help me with, shooting or editing or things that I didn't learn in my time. But I'd like to find something globally to get involved with that would be a great thing for just a podcast, a blog, something, even writing an article, in my observations of a lifetime.
Of a lifetime, yeah. I mean, the sky is your limit, Paul. So I'm sure that something will come that will be also as interesting, for the next, 10, 15 years of your life, and enjoying traveling around. And but truly inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing this on Job Tales, and showing really that anything can happen, anything can change. Nothing is really permanent in our lifetime, and also to not be scared of changing, or of what life can propose you. So
No, I
thanks a
would
lot.
say very much, Laura, that it's a lifetime, and don't live a life that you're not happy in living.
Mm.
Pursue under all circumstances to better yourself and to better your life.
And on that note, I will end it here. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
That was Paul Cockerill, TV producer and flight attendant. You will find more episodes on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcast, as well as any of your favorite players. I'm always looking for new guests, so please send me ideas to jobtalespodcast@gmail.com. See you next week for a new episode of Job Tales.